There we go. We're live. Oh, we're live, and we got my special guest tonight. It was funny just as we started going live, someone called me at the perfect
Yeah,
time.
no.
Uh,
hmm
Perfect time to call me. But that all got sorted out. I think we're sounding good. Let's see how are you sounding, sir? How are you doing today? I know you got some shout outs you want to make, so please, the floor is
Yeah,
yours.
thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Hello, chat. Hello, everyone. First shout I've got to say is obviously thanks to yourself for allowing me to do this. And secondly, my daughter, because it's my first time on YouTube, my daughter has said that I have to state she is a lover of Minecraft and a Minecraft pro. So with that out of the way, that's pretty much it. But thank you anyway.
Oh no, happy to, of course. Always great to say hi to your kid, especially your daughter. For this
hmm
first time on YouTube, of course. That's wonderful, and congratulations on her for being an expert at Minecraft. That's
Yeah,
no small task. I've seen kids get lost for years in that game, and
I
make some
thought I
great
was
stuff.
yeah, I thought it was great. One time I actually made her a wee house,
Hmm.
just a wee house, and I spent the better part of 2 hours making it. She came downstairs and just made this big tower, rooms everywhere. I was like, all right, okay. So there you go, Rochelle. You are a Minecraft pro.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're not going to waste too much time because our Gums here is in the UK. It's a little late, but I'm always
hmm
appreciative if you're coming down here. I know you're appreciative being on the show, but I can't wait to talk about tonight's script with you,
hmm
sir, because it's going to be a fun one. And since the audio is sounding great and there's no issues from the audience, as I can see in the chat, let's get down to it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs. Screwed that up. There we go. Discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie going audience, a behind the scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is Gums 1983. Dude, so
Um,
happy to have you here. We've been
yeah.
talking a few times over since I started this show and even in the prep to
hmm
it. And I know you had to get your own setup situated, and I'm appreciative of that. So
hmm
I'm happy to have you here. Tell a little bit about yourself to the audience. We did the fatherly duty for yourself already, so
Yeah,
let's get
thank you.
into the more
Yeah,
personal stuff without too much, of course.
indeed. Yeah, so my name's Richard. I stay in, well, Scotland, just outside Glasgow. First time on YouTube, so be gentle. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it'll be a very good episode in terms of different ideas and different things that we can throw around. I have got a bit of a sore throat, so I will be eating some lozenges, so I do apologise about that. If I sound quite rough, I do apologise. But yeah, absolutely.
No,
Looking
it
forward to it.
adds to the default masculine nature of the Scottish accent or dialect in your case, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there are other Scotsmen that sound a lot better than I. But no, thank you. As you said at the top of the show, I'm eager to get started. The time's fine, but I'm eager to get started because I think this will be a good chat, and I think there'll be a lot of other chats can start off this, and I hope others come forward to put their own views on it.
That sounds great. So, let's let the audience know a little bit from the thumbnail. Title of the
hmm
script is called Two Faced. It is from the 2022 Blacklist and is written by Cat Wilkins, who doesn't have any produce credits to her name, but she does have representation, and she's got another project with a comedian. My understanding of. In 2022, her
hmm
script came number 5 on the 2022 Blacklist with 25 votes. And Gums, if you would just share with the audience the log line to this script for them.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm not even going to try and do the the voice.
That's
So
okay.
a, a high school senior attempts to get her principal fired after observing racist behaviour, but she quickly learns he won't go down without a fight.
Yeah, so mull over on that for a moment, chat, to see if you can guess what type of tone this week's script will have. The synopsis of this story is Joy, the eldest of three, in a single-parent home, is hoping for a letter of recommendation from the school's much-lauded principal in hopes of scoring a scholarship to pay for college. But when she discovers that the principal wore blackface as Michael Jackson in the 1980s and shows him this evidence, he rescinds his letter of recommendation, causing the two to go to war over their own reputations. So we've got definitely a social conscious type script today. It definitely feels of its time, of 2020 to 2022, that sort of period. So please share your first impressions and thoughts of the script.
Yeah. At first, when I started reading it, I did enjoy it. I thought I could see what they were trying to do. But after since rereading, there's obviously things that we'll get into. But I quite enjoyed the premise. You could picture it as other films, other IPs, the bits and bobs of other IPs inside the actual script itself. One of the characters we will get into, just had him, or that particular character, laser focused as one particular actor, and then I couldn't really shake that, which kind of ruined it a wee bit for me. But apart from that, I said at the very start before we came in, is I quite enjoyed it, but we'll get to that as well, obviously.
Oh no, I would say like it's with regards to its level of vocabulary, how it approaches dialogue and scene descriptions, it is well written. There's definitely some skill behind that. A lot of things, a lot of other aspects of the script are a little bit more perplexing. Cat Wilkins does a good job kind of framing an underdog type character at first. So the main character is Joy Robinson. She's black, 17, raised by a single mother, and has two twin sisters that are 11 years old that she kind of takes care of during the day. Like, when they're back from school, she cooks them breakfast, cooks them dinner while mom's working. Mom's a waitress. So we've got a bunch of these tropes in here. And Joy is apparently a very good student. And she's well liked by everybody at school, essentially. And she has a guy named Frankie, who is one of the few characters in this entire screenplay that is not given an ethnicity. I noticed it was Jack and Frankie were the only two characters where you didn't know what they were, but everybody else, they were. The writer uses Latinx. And I apologize for all my Latin friends out there. That I'm just quoting what is written. I'm not actually endorsing it. Uses that to describe one of the side characters named Rain Rodriguez. Everyone else is either black, white, or mixed, and it's a little kind of heavy-handed. So it's definitely of the time. And then, but there's also the introduction of Mr. Jeffries, who's the black vice principal, who's kind of endearing, and he just kind of wants to stay out of conflict, which is funny because usually the vice principal is supposed to be the hard ass on everybody at the school, but he's not. And so we're already framed pretty quickly. I mean, and I will say this to the writer, she does establish pretty quickly the environment of this setting. Whether or not it's beneficial to an audience is up for debate. But I will say, it's Joy has a goal, and it's clearly defined. She knows that her family can't afford for her to go to college. So she's basically, her entire future hinges on getting a scholarship so that she can go. And she is trying to get some kind of, not necessarily leverage, but get points in her favor for being rewarded this scholarship by asking the principal, who is the antagonist in this story, Principal Gerald.
That's it, Gerald.
Just Gerald. Gerald, to write a letter of recommendation. And you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be the obstacle. But he's like, yeah, sure, I'll have a letter of recommendation for you by the end of the week. You're a great student, and you're best friends with his niece. Not a biological niece, but like Gerald's best friend is married to Joy's best friend's mom. And that's and her best friend is Drea, which it's a weird name, but whatever. And so he's got a little bit of favoritism there, but I mean it's fine. Like there's no real conflict, and so we get this set up and everything's kind of good. And what ends up happening is Joy is part of the prom committee, and they're doing because they weren't able to get a Euphoria themed prom, and I'm guessing it's based off the television show Euphoria at the time, because there's a joke in there about getting mints that looked like fentanyl, and I'm like,
Yes.
that's a good joke. Okay, not bad. You're winning me over. And when they realize, oh, you can't do that, they have to go from another angle, and that angle is now going to be blast from the past. So to conduct research about what to do, Joy is assigned to go to the yearbook committee and get old yearbooks to see what those prom photos were like and try and model it after that. So that's what goes here. And when she goes to the yearbook committee and she gets, and we meet Rain, who is our secondary character, who is running yearbook because she was fired from being on the school paper for being a journalist, a very intrusive journalist. Joy searches through the yearbooks and she sees an old yearbook photo of Principal Gerald, who was dressed up as Michael Jackson, late 70s, early 80s, and sporting blackface. And this really traumatizes Joy because Principal Gerald is a hero of this school. Like, everybody likes him. He knows all the students. He knows how to appeal to them. He knows how to encourage them. He is a role model, and nobody hates him. Like, that's the thing. Like, the way that Cat Wilkins sets this up is that nobody hates anybody here. Everything kind of, they have their rivalries and they have their tiffs, but there's no actual, like, oh, he's the man where you got to hate him type of stuff. Gerald is well liked, and he's trying to be very personable with the students without crossing any lines. So Joy finds this, doesn't know what to do, shows her friend, of course, Drea, and she's seeing her uncle with this, and she's freaked out. And so what Joy decides to do, instead of just, thinking maybe it was a one-time thing, maybe there's not really anything there because, it's 40 years ago, maybe just leave it alone because there's no evidence to show that Gerald has ever behaved or treated anyone, offensively or racist or racially in any sense. But instead, Joy decides, I'm going to ask the principal about this.
Yes.
So
I found that strange. I did. I found that extremely
please,
strange.
carry us on to the next beat because this was one for the books.
Yeah, because like you said there, is that you're going along and it's the perfect town, USA. White picket fences. The perfect school should have been an architecture book. It was just this utopia for them. And then, oh wait, now this thing that's, let's be honest, is not nice. And she decides instead of saying, "Oh, do you know what? It was a thing of its time," or maybe speaking to him off, maybe not just going into his room and demanding to speak to him. What is this? Because I don't like this. What is this? I found that quite jarring in a sense. It kind of took you away from whatever it was Kat was attempting to do at the start. This just came out of nowhere, and I find that just the way Joy, obviously hindsight 2020, it's an amazing thing. We look at Joy subjectively as a character and you go, you're just too perfect, pal. Like, nobody's that liked. Nobody's that, well, maybe there are, but nobody's realistically that like, nobody's realistically that smart, shall we say. I mean, you need the scholarship. Okay, so we identify the scholarship. So now there's this blackface has kind of turned its ugly head. Like, right, okay, well, that is bad. Let's go and quietly have a chat with him, or maybe speak to someone else who's maybe round about that kind of time. No, straight into the office. I'm not happy with this. I want answers. But who is she to speak to her principal like that? It's like I didn't get that. I kind of found that a bit kind of jarring as well.
It was a bit jarring, but it's also it shows that the character is driven a bit more by the concept of social justice as opposed to what she really wants, because she does this at the start of the week, and the principal promised her a letter recommendation by the end of the week, and she's literally bringing this to his attention, which would compromise said letter. And one thing I want to point out that we kind of skipped over first, because we actually started the story where the story starts, but the screenplay starts the story on Friday with a conflict between Joy and Gerald, and then it pauses and then takes us back to the beginning of the week, which is not a good trope to have for writing process side of things. And the reason that is because it's essentially the writer conveying to the audience that the story that they have come up with only gets interesting at this point here that I'm showing you right now. The first thing I'm showing you is the
Mm-hmm.
most interesting part of the story, and everything else leading up to that is not going to compare, which means that your inciting incident is not inciting enough to get people of interest. So you have to give them a tease with the climax. And I was telling Gums this earlier, is that we saw this trope with a number of episodes from like the Flash TV series, and more prominently with the first Sonic the Hedgehog film, where Sonic is running away from all these explosions, and then the movie pauses, and then we get the voiceover. You might be wondering how I got here. Well, let's go back to this
Yes.
point in time. And it's essentially a restart of the movie. And it's not really good method of storytelling. Mission Impossible 3 does it as well, with Tom Cruise and the, getting the probe up his nose type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a TV gimmick that's usually done as a result in post-production more often than not. And that is when they get their first assembly edit together and they realize, yeah, the story's kind of moving really slow and it doesn't get interesting until this point. So what they'll do is they'll take that point, they'll move it to the front, they'll bring in an actor to loop a voiceover to thread those two together, so that when you're channel surfing and you see that opening shot and you're like, ooh, this is interesting, and then they cut to commercial and come back and it's 5 days earlier. Now it's framing essentially a set of boring scenes as if it's being a mystery when it's actually not. It's all just set up for what eventually is going to happen. And this is a very amateur mistake. I was disappointed by that, because I thought maybe you could have done something a little bit more to really start off your script with a bang, especially if you're dealing with a principal and the logline who is apparently racist, but we see no evidence of that, and a student who decides to get them essentially canceled. And then when you frame that logline, it basically looks to me as like, well, okay, let's say the principal is racist. Getting them canceled, is that really a needed thing? Wouldn't their racism get them fired, canceled, come up on their own? Why does this one person have to go to these lengths to do this? Doesn't seem to make sense. And then it basically puts you into question, well, who's really on the right side here? Like, I don't want to be defending a racist, but I also don't want to be defending a person that's going out of their way to do harm to someone who is essentially inflicting self-harm on themselves. It's like, it's almost like kicking a person when they're down. So it muddies the lines on a protagonist sort of things. But we get that reaffirmed later when Joy discovers this photo and basically presents it to the principal and says, hey, I saw this. Can you please explain this to me? Because we all like you. We all appreciate you. And the principal has a very rational response. He's like, I was a kid. It was dumb. There's no excuse for it. I've never done it since. Thanks for bringing this to my attention, but, I'm really sorry about that. And he takes the yearbook. He's like, I'm going to hold on to this. This doesn't need to go any further. It's a dark secret from my past. I've obviously not that person anymore. He does all the normal things. But what's interesting is that when you take a look at what the situation is, it's essentially Joy coming in there with blackmail to the principal to facilitate something that he has already promised her. So it's really, from his perspective, it's like, what is this girl who I'm already going to support doing? Like, why is she doing this right now? Does she want something more? If so, what is it? Why would she do this? What is she going to hold this over me? And so so that's your inciting incident, is that she goes there, she incites this problem for herself, which is a good thing to do for a comedy. You kind of want your main character to facilitate a little bit of their own problems and then have to dig themselves out. And ideally that does in a comedic way. This script doesn't really go in that direction, unfortunately.
No.
And so she leaves, and later she's brought back to the she goes back to talk to the principal more, and she catches him shredding the blackface photo.
Yeah.
And that upsets her a little bit, and he says, well, I'm no longer going to write you that letter of recommendation because you've done this. You've essentially tried to compromise his reputation from a mistake. Basically, you dug out a skeleton and presented it to the world, was essentially what cancel culture is. They look into the history of someone they don't like, they try and find dirt, and then exploit it for their own gratification or their own virtue. And that's what Joy is doing. And so I'm like, how is this supposed to be our heroic main character that we're following?
Yeah. Absolutely.
What was going through your head when you picked up, when you started noticing this dynamic coming in?
But very similar, the exact same place, to be honest with you. I thought the start, like, when I read it, the first time I read it, I went, "Oh, that's cool," because I've never read a script like that. I've never really read a script, and I've never saw it written how you would see on TV. And I'm like, "Well, that's pretty cool." That. And then I read it the second time. I went, "Like, I don't need to read that bit at the bottom now because I know it's already there."
Yeah.
But we're talking about when she went into the office. I'm like, right, I can understand you're upset, but there are channels that you go through. You don't just barge into somebody. It's never implied she barges in, but she's obviously not made a meeting with the man. She's just went into his office. He must have an open door policy. She's walked into his office and went, "I'm not happy with this thing. We deal with it." He's went, very honestly went, "I'm really sorry, truly sorry. It was a different time. I was a different person." You know, that kind of thing, right?
Mm.
That should be the end of it there. But instead, she pushes on it. And then when she goes back in, and him destroying the evidence. Well, no, he's not. All he's doing is deleting a page out of a yearbook yearbook with him dressed as that, because obviously he feels shame on that. That then to him puts his back up, and he's like, "Well, why are you coming back in? Like, I've apologised," kind of idea. That's what I took from it. And the mere fact that Federa kind of started getting a bad taste about Joy. She came like another Ray Palpatine, another Mary Sue, going to be the president of the world at some point, that kind of thing. And when I read that, when I started getting that vision of her, I couldn't find myself to be seeing her as the heroine. She was just, everything worked out for her perfectly.
Yeah.
I couldn't get that out of my head after that.
It was a little troublesome because I'm now wondering, he's like, okay, so the conflict is now she has started this feud with the principal.
Mm-hmm.
Now she got the reason she goes back is because she hears from another student who happens to be a white guy that he's probably that he was told to apply for this scholarship.
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember what the scholarship's name was. It is the Haynes Scholarship. That's what it's called. Haynes, just like the underwear. Applied for the Haynes Scholarship, which is apparently specific to minority people.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't even know or care. Like, he's just like, yeah, the principal's recommended I do it, so whatever. And that's what gets her incited to go back to the principal's office, where she catches him shredding that one page from the yearbook. And when she kind of protests a little bit, that's when he says, "I'm going to recommend somebody else. Sorry," what have you. And this what starts the series of events where she gets pretty upset. She goes back to the yearbook committee, says that, everything's all not ideal. Rain, who is the head of the yearbook committee, is like, "Well, we should just find more evidence and expose him because this is bad." And as soon as I see that in the script, I'm like, well, wait a minute, Rain should be the main character, because so far we've learned up to this point in the first 25 pages that Rain was kicked out of the school paper for being an aggressive journalist. She's stuck doing yearbook duties, and now she's got a hot story of something scandalous that she could use to try and get back on the paper. Now, granted, it's really, it's scandalous in the sense of relations between people. It's not criminal. There's nothing illegal. It's not illegal. It's taboo, and it's not really appropriate to, sport blackface, or at least find out that you did at some point in your past. But I'm not sure of any actual criminal code of that. Is it illegal to pose as a minority when you get no financial gain or do any physical or damage to it or not? There's the whole Rachel Dolezal case from many, many years ago, and had the NAACP saying that she was black, but ended up not being. So I'm like, it's really like ambiguous. There's no clear understanding. But right now, the script is framing Joy and Rain as they're supposed to be the heroes to uncover what's going on. And all their methods suggest that they're just kind of getting more blackmail. And I'm wondering to myself, is Joy going to collect more blackmail and then threaten the principal that she's going to release it if he doesn't recommend her for the Haynes Scholarship with a letter? And all the time I'm like, this is the story of a villain.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is their villain up. This is their villain introduction. And you do find it extremely hard reading it. You find it extremely hard to look at Joy and go, yeah, on you go, pal, I'll back you up. Yeah, come on, underdog, let's go for it. You just, we need to find more information. All right, okay, and then obviously we'll lead into that in a minute. And you just find you go, no, I can't, obviously as a Scotsman, we love an underdog. same with like the UK in general. We all like an underdog. Everybody does,
Hmm.
and you just didn't find she was the underdog. You actually found at that point you're like actually side more with the principal because he's doing a bit of apart from deleting the thing and obviously deleting the page in question, like which is under like I can sort of understand his reasoning for it, but at nowhere in the start of this did you learn that the Haynes scholarship was for minorities. I only read it at the very end when they were talking about it at a later point.
Yeah.
And I was like, and he's like, oh, and it was Joy had said something, but I thought it's for, coloured and minorities. Well, no, it's not, and that should have been in there
Yeah. Should
because
have been a
then it
stipulation.
gives, yeah, because then you've got a point for Joy to say, well, wait now, you're genuinely doing this on a racial basis because of me being black or colour, what have you. And it wasn't there, and I just didn't find I couldn't really attach myself to Joy per se to say like, oh, I'll come on, let's go. I want to see how you get on. But
Hmm.
obviously, we'll get into that. Obviously, as the script moves forward.
Well, the way the writer frames this is that Joy is the underdog because she's poor, and Gerald is not an underdog because he's rich, and we find out that he's rich because he's a trust fund kid, but he's a trust fund kid that actually
Yes.
is a principal at a public school that is in something of the
Mhm.
suburb, but it reaches out beyond the suburb jurisdiction. So where
Mhm.
Joy lives, she doesn't necessarily live in a ghetto, but she doesn't live in the suburbs, and
Mhm.
so she's part of that school. She's getting a good education, and it's the other part too is like the principal is well liked. So clearly, here's a guy who doesn't need to worry about money. He's doing a job that doesn't pay well
Correct.
by any of the other standards, but he's also well liked by the students, and we don't see any indication that the students are struggling, that they're bad, that they have a terrible graduation rate. We have
Mhm.
nothing of that to show that this guy could be a bad egg. All we know is that he's a straight white man who happens to be a trust fund kid who's a principal of a school. We find out when Joy and Rain follow him home. He lives in a gated community,
Mhm.
and the only
Mhm.
kind of other bad thing he does is he happens to be having an affair with the mayor's wife. Now, keep in mind, the principal is not married. So he's not
Mhm.
really committing any problem here. He's like George Costanza in that Seinfeld episode who thinks he committed adultery, but the
Yes.
wife tells him, no, I committed adultery. You're fine.
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed.
That's him. So, and what these girls do is they break into his home to find more dirt, and they end up going into his closet, which is like the size of an apartment. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm still thinking this is very comical right now. Like I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the next step that's going to show how everything is like maybe it's a Three's Company episode, or maybe it's more
Yes.
like a misdirect because we're dealing with an unreliable narrator. So I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt at this point, and they find a shoebox full of Polaroids, all of him in blackface, and everybody in the gated community, which
Mhm.
apparently is
Mhm.
populated by all white people, in
Yes.
blackface. And they're dated
Mhm.
very recent photos. Like I think the most recent one they say is like 2016.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Just
laughing to
16, yeah.
myself because this is not because it's funny, because it's actually just ridiculous. And also because
Yes.
it doesn't feel authentic given the fact that an aspect of, and this is not a huge spoiler, but the wife of the mayor, who is white, the mayor is black, and he lives in this gated
Mhm.
community, and all the photos are of the gated community in blackface. So clearly, the mayor has had to have seen this, or
Mhm.
participated in some way. But no, that is not the equation. Does not match the
No.
result, and so it's really it just feels kind of like thrown in there. And while they're in the closet collecting these photos that they're going to leak, I guess,
Mhm.
Gerald and the mayor's wife are starting to get down in the bedroom.
Get busy.
And so they take photos of this act
Yes.
before
Yes.
they actually get busy. They they get the foreplay photos,
Mhm. Oh,
and then they
good
manage
God.
to sneak out, almost get caught, and
Mhm.
then get away. And then of course, what do? They write an article that's loaded with conjecture with these
Yep.
photos, and they post it on the school paper, and it kind of gets around, and then the principal is all flustered. He doesn't know what to do, and he tries to take
Mhm.
everything down. And then he does the turn where he becomes the evil guy, where he's like, you don't know who you're messing
Mhm.
with, Joy. I'm going to get you for
Mhm.
this. I'm going to make your life hell,
Yeah.
everything. And she's all cocky. She's like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like,
That I
okay,
didn't get
well,
either.
clearly we know what the tone of this script is now. At this point, there's no denying what's going on here. This is a message-driven story of sorts.
Yeah. I mean, we'll go back to a couple of bits there you just alluded to, right? So see oh dear God, see the bit where they break into the house and you're like,
Yep.
you just broke into a man's house. Now at this point, what evidence do we have apart from a picture taken, 1980s? Michael
Right.
Jackson, who was, let's be honest, back in the day, was the biggest thing in music, right? It doesn't condone what he did, but understand he's apologised. We've moved on. She's not happy because, let's be honest, the butt of the story here is she's basically butthurt because she's not getting what she wants. Because she's perfect and everything goes for her, she thinks that because she's poor, she should have the scholarship. So she's deciding to break into a man's house. Not necessarily his house, a gated community first, then a man's property, to try and find evidence. Now, what had happened if they'd went in and they never found anything?
Yeah.
That was the line I thought they were going to go with. There was nothing there, and it was all hidden somewhere else. And like you say, I got a bit comedic, and I'm laughing because I'm going that this is just, you could just signpost it thereafter what was going to happen next, and the hid behind the curtain. Can you not see their feet? Like there's nobody in films look down at the bottom of a curtain and go, oh, there's somebody's shoes there.
In the time it takes you to hide behind a curtain, you can open the window and jump out.
Correct. And they're standing there, and then it's the line. Was it? I can't remember her name. The journalist woman, Kaya. Anyway, she was like that. She was like, "This has just turned me off sex." I was like, "That I like that. That's a wee funny. I like that."
Oh yeah. Oh, Sonia.
Obviously,
Yeah, Sonia said that. Yeah.
Yes, Sonia. Sorry. Yeah, I get that. I find that funny because obviously their ages and such. You know, I get that.
Yeah, a
And
couple of
then
40-year-olds getting down. It's like, yeah, it's not
yes,
not exactly turning
oh,
anyone on. It shouldn't really.
no, getting busy. But and it was just that at that point there, it was like it was also you missed out. So they went to a meeting beforehand. There was I don't know, a neighbourhood watch meeting
Oh
where they
right,
all went
yes.
out.
Go, please share with us the neighborhood
And
assembly.
yeah, that was at the neighbourhood assembly. Sorry, so they went to a neighbourhood assembly, and the wife of the
Of the mayor.
mayor was there, and she's the president of the association, the assembly, you know, the neighbourhood watch area.
Mm-hmm.
She's the president, and there's a guy called Bill stood up and gave it all 4 more years, you know, for all this rah nonsense. And I found that extremely I was like, there's no reason to have that there. It doesn't add anything to the story, but then it does in a wee bit, as we alluded to, obviously, because her and the principal get busy. But at that point, so they're building up who this particular woman is. So she's the president of it. Her husband's the mayor, and they call each other. What was it? She called him Jer Bear.
Right? Yeah.
That's a Jer Bear. And I was like, Bulk. That's just like, no, just no. And I kept reading on, and then obviously the kids broke in. Went straight up to his bedroom, and as you say, they opened the door, and oh my God, it's bigger than my apartment. I said, what do you expect if the man's wealthy? He's going to have nice things. And then the writer tried to allude to maybe a bit of psychosis there because everything was perfectly in place. Everything was like his shuts were all lined up. Everything was nice and neat and put away. And I was like, I don't really see any sort of psychosis or like the man's not a psycho because he's a single male. You know, maybe early 40s, something like that. You know, a single male who has a lot of money, so he's going to have his stuff the way he wants it. Kids aren't pulling it off. He's not got a wife to take over half his wardrobe. You know, he can have anything he wants in terms of putting it in there. So I thought that was quite nice. But then it still was the point was, why would you keep things like that if you know it's going, like, you know, why would you keep them in your wardrobe per se? Why would you are obviously a wealthy man. Do you not have a safe in your house that you put all your things in that you don't want others to see or keep hidden or things like that? And these are the questions that were going through my mind when they were in there doing it. And then obviously getting out behind the curtain, I was just like, come on, that's so lazy. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, the neighbourhood watch scene was, to me, I just thought it was tacked on because obviously as we're reading it as a linear thing. So it's like, it just seemed out of place until they two go busy.
It does because it tries to tie in the fact that the gated community is concerned of a mural that's been in the high school about Christopher Columbus finding America. And apparently it's him, you know, opening his arms to a whole bunch of Native Americans. And there is, we skipped over the one really good joke. And that was For All People is a student group that protests against things, and they call themselves FAP. So it's For All People, and it's like For All People against racism. So it's FAP against racism, and you're like, okay, that's funny. Where was the rest of that? Like it just, and yeah, they're protesting the mural. The principal comes in and says, "Hey, I'm going to tell you by the end of this year, this mural is going to be gone." And then he goes to the gated community and they say, "Well, we don't want the mural gone. We like it." And he's like, "Don't worry, the mural's not going anywhere because those kids are going to graduate. No one's going to know it's around."
And remember this when he talks.
Oh yeah, whenever he lies, he puts his hand on the back of his neck, and so every once in a while you'll see him do that. But so yeah, it kind of bounces around to the fact that so he's putting on a face. He is two-faced. He's not the great person he is. He's a politician essentially. He says whatever gets the constituents happy so that he can maintain his position of power.
Correct.
Great. He doesn't matter. He's playing against the rich and he's playing against the poor. Like he's doing both. The students that have no money, that have a future that they're hoping he can help. He's playing into their egos, into their wants, and then the gated community with which he lives and their concerns, he's playing into them as well. And you're like, okay, great. So he's a puppet master of sorts. Wonderful.
Yes.
Classic politician move.
Yep.
And then when they get out of the gated community and they post that paper and they put it on the billboard, on the bulletin boards at school, and it gets all around, he grabs every paper, he shreds it, he tosses it, he throws it away. And then he calls for an assembly. And in this assembly, where he gathers the entire school, he announces that he has colon cancer and has been diagnosed for the last 3 months, and it's gone to his brain. Correct. And he basically uses this as a distraction to get sympathy, which most of the school pretty much says, yes, we're with you, Principal Gerald. We want you to get better. Forget about the photos and the hit piece article. We believe in you. And Joy gets really upset, and Drea, who is again Joy's best friend and also the niece to Principal Gerald, reveals that she knows Gerald's lying. And obviously we as an audience know he's lying because it's perfect timing. Oh man, this scandal's come out. Wow, good thing I have colon cancer. Like that's not usually how it works.
Indeed.
So what ends up happening is that Drea, Rain, and mostly Rain come up with a plan to try and get him on audio tape admitting that he's lying. And so it goes through a dinner scene where Gerald is invited over to Drea's family's home. So Gerald and Drea's father are best friends. They've known each other since they were kids. And Drea brings up, the assembly and how weird it was that he told the whole school he had colon cancer when he didn't tell his best friend, his family essentially. And what's funny is that the best friend is like, "Oh dude, do you want my colon? I'll give you my colon." And everybody's like, that's not really how it works. He's like, but you didn't tell us. And of course Gerald says that he's had it for 6 months when he originally said 3. Drea calls him on that and he's like, well, it feels like 6. And so it goes through this thing, and she's wearing a wire, and her friends are recording it via Wi-Fi in a laptop in Drea's bedroom. So none of the adults know that these kids are in their house doing this. And eventually they get the recording. And what's sad is that they don't really do anything with it. Nope. And, we're just kind of going through the motions. And then there's this character named Frankie, who we mentioned it earlier, not described as a skin color, but he's kind of a jockey loser type. But he's really infatuated with Joy, and he ends up taking her to the prom, which brings us to the climax, where we find out that Joy has a thumb drive of incriminating evidence because, and this isn't really a spoiler, but because the screenplay doesn't show any repercussions of anything, but informs us that Gerald has been working with someone on the Haynes Scholarship Committee to embezzle money, which doesn't make any sense given how rich he is.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And the other part too is we get one news report where a student says, yeah, I got the Haynes Scholarship, but it didn't pay all of my tuition and that hurt me. But we don't see anything beyond that little news blip. And so it's really like we're very lost as to what's going on here. And so this is now the first act that the screenplay has informed anyone reading it that this guy is bad. But we don't see any damages of bad. We don't see repercussions. We don't see anyone suffering as a result of this actions. So it's really now, it's literally fictional conjecture in a story about a bad person who we're told is bad because, well, I'm not going to reiterate what the writer's probably suggesting here. But it just, it's the point where I'm like, I'm reading the script and it said, okay, this embezzlement stuff is your starting point. The embezzlement stuff should be the truth that of Principal Gerald, and that the reality is he's not really a trust fund baby. He says that as his cover to hide his embezzlement.
Correct.
That would have been so much better because I'm like, that would be way more evil. And that's your first thing. And then the next part would be like, okay, now we have to see the fallout of that. We have to see who are suffering as a result of these people that got this scholarship. Like what happens if maybe Joy had a best friend that was a year above her that got the scholarship, went to the school, and then all of a sudden she sees him working at a fast food thing, and you find out, the scholarship only has X amount of dollars per student, so I was only able to go for one semester, and now I got to defer my next semester and work my way up to pay for the rest of the tuition, even though the scholarship advertises a full thing. And it's like, well, that's your story right there. You get an investigation to expose the corruption, find out where all the money is. It leads to the principal. You find out he's a bad dude who's got this veneer of niceness going on, and now you want to take him down. But instead, you bring that in so late into the story. Yeah. And you don't show us any suffering. You don't show us anything to want to hate the guy. And it just kind of deflates the whole energy that could have been built up with this type of story.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, right? My point when I started hating Gerald was the cancer thing. He stood up and said, "Oh, by the way, I've got cancer." And I was like, oh no, because before that, they were calling him racist, they were calling him, that, and the vitriol was there. The hatred was there, obviously, switched on kids nowadays. And then they move forward, and then he goes to the house, and you're like, he tries to scare his niece. Like, he tries to scare her the way he's talking and that. And I'm like, I genuinely hate you. And then, like you say, you get to the very bit with the embezzlement, and it's like, that's your story. That should have been the start, and the blackface, it should have been the other way around. And the blackface thing, as bad as it is, should have been the fluff, because it's never mentioned thereafter. Right. The blackface is just gone. Once they get that recording of him stating about the cancer, it's gone. Never mentioned again.
Yeah, it's not brought up again. It's not used against him again. It can't be, because it's not really a crime. It's just him being a jerk. And that's not illegal.
Absolutely. And then you look at it and you go, the first thing I said, I went, what? Embezzlement? The man's a trust fund kid. He's got money. He doesn't need the money. Why is he doing it? And then my mind got drawn back to the sitting meeting with
Brett.
Andrea's mum and dad, sorry.
Oh, that
time,
and then
the little conversation they had. Oh, I was too scared to ask, Drea's mother out, and you did it for me. And I'm like, could that be maybe where the racist? I started adding things into it because the information was not provided to me. So I'm going, maybe that's where his racism started, in a sense, because he couldn't get the girl he wanted. Because as we found in a minute, she's very key to it, but at no point does she seem like any form of character apart from a backing character who just sits there, has a conversation with her partner and obviously the main character. And I then fast forward myself back to this embezzlement, and I'm like, if he turned around and said that absolutely the trust fund is dried up, because they will dry up eventually, Bill Gates or Elon Musk, it will dry up. Is this how he's keeping this lavish lifestyle going?
Yeah,
that's a way of doing it. Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be a great way to do it as well. And the other part too is, again, every act of them investigating is essentially violating their personal Gerald's personal privacy, because Joy finds his laptop. I think it was Joy finds the laptop, and then
you've jumped a bit.
I have jumped a bit. Yeah. Okay, pull me back. Where are we going next?
Right, so where did we get to? We got to the bit where she came back to, she found out about the embezzlement. So that's where we are roughly, right? So
the way she finds out about the embezzlement, she hacks into his computer. Yeah, and the password to get into it is Drea's mom's name. And that
Yes.
tells me that, wait, if it's his mom's name, does that mean that the principal had a crush on her and
Hmm.
then used his friend to kind of get a rejection from her so that he could come in and date her, but it didn't work out that way and those two are together? In which case, does that not go against the concept of him being racist? Or if you're
Correct.
trying to play that he's hypocritical, you're really failing here because at no point do we see any pattern of hypocrisy in that regard. It's more like he's fine with people of other ethnicities and color, doesn't bother him at all.
There's
And
a couple of
and
throwaway
then
lines.
and then later on, only when he starts to be manipulated into being evil, he doesn't say any racial slurs, but he sets himself up where he could, and then the script says, but he doesn't. And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure, like, pick a lane, like, either commit to him being racist or commit to him not. Don't, vacillate between the two, because now we as an audience are going to have doubts about the character and what's authentic of this story.
Hmm. Hmm. I know, absolutely, and that was the problem. Like I said, me personally, I could take if he was racist, then I could take it from him potentially losing the girl that he wanted,
Yep.
like you just said. I could take that from that, and then him wanting to be in the life just so he can be around about her. That kind of thing. It's a very, very, very weak way of doing it, but it's a way of doing it that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? We understand it. Both of us came to the same conclusion before we even came on to do the show. And I just find the only character that was semi-written well was Gerald. Joy was obviously going to save the world and everybody lives in it. But Gerald, you could see if you wrote him a bit more as a conflicting character. Like he still wants her and he longs for her, and that's his motivation to basically steal this money and off these kids who deserve it. And in no way, I mean, you go in and you find the laptop. Like again, any self-respecting person that's going to do these kind of things isn't going to leave something like that lying out in the open. It's going to be in a locked drawer. It's going to be in a desk. She's already broke the law going into the school. She's already broke the law going into his room. So, there are questions to be asked about her. I'm not saying she's a saint by any stretch of the imagination, but there are questions to be asked. And I just find that when we find that information out, that was your hook at the start. That's the start of your film.
Yes.
That's the start of your script. This man, or how would I start it? This person, Gerald, is here because the trust fund ran out, or you could have him standing at the bank or an ATM or coming out the bank being told
He's
6 months
overdrawn or
previously,
something. Yeah, yeah. Like just
correct,
show
his
him like,
money's ran out.
yeah, that or he's talking with his accountant. He's like, well, Gerald, you're going to be broke in 6 months. It's like, well, why? Well, you got to cut your spending. But I got a trust fund. Well, it's tapped out, and what you make as a principal is not going to cover your bills. So you got to find a way to tighten up the budget. In which case, that's the inciting incident for him. That turns him into that's his inciting incident to do this crime. And then on top of that, you also have to realize that Gerald, when Joy starts investigating why, Gerald, and she talks to the vice principal, we find out from the vice principal that he's not wanted there by Gerald. We don't know why.
Correct.
But we also know that the superintendent has been trying to find a way to get rid of Gerald for years. So now we're into a conspiracy where these two other characters within the administration don't want Gerald as principal either, and don't have evidence to get rid of him. And it just so happens that those two characters happen to be black as well. So you have a conspiracy between two black administrators wanting to get rid of the white guy from a school that actually likes him. And then you have a Latin girl and a black girl and a black and white mixed girl all working to try and get rid of the straight white man. And the screenplay is trying to frame it that he's the racist.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what else is? You've hit the nail on the head there, right? And you know what else is? It's of its time. When you read it, the first time I read it, as I said to you before, I quite enjoyed it. That kind of thing. But as I read more, my eyes were drawn, and I could start seeing holes. I'm going, and nobody would be told this. Why we told that? I'm making this story up for me to understand it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not a script.
Yeah,
person.
You're filling in the blanks, right?
Yeah, I'm putting my own headcanon in here. That's what I'm going. It's obviously they're accusing him of being racist because he wanted the wife, and he never got her. So that's why I think he's a racist POS. And but at nowhere after it. After they get the incriminating evidence, obviously with the girl wearing a wire, which is illegal. Let's be honest. There's other things there that you go, why is that there? Like it's almost as if they just threw something against the wall to see what would stick.
Yeah.
And then embezzlement. That's 2020 it came out, so around about for the year of 2016. What was going on in the world around about then?
Well, this was written
Nothing.
in 2022. It does mention in the script that some of the years are 2020. So it's really, I mean, it's a little over the place. Clearly, I think she'd been working on this for a while, and she just forgot to update some of the dates. But it got circulated in 2022, so that's when it came out. 2022, only a year and a half ago, not that long ago, but definitely a lot. A lot was going on in 2022 that was pretty similar to 2021 and 2020, more so than what's currently happening right now. So we there is a delineation point. 2023 seems to have been where we started to see things kind of turn away from acknowledging these types of behaviors as true virtual signaling and not so much anything of noble behavior. I'd say. So yeah, like the thing is, like, we're getting all these things like, yeah, he's a jerk. He's sleeping with the mayor's wife. He's been in blackface. There's a very, very, very small moment where we find out that one of the single teachers is sleeping with the principal, and she's upset because she feels like he's cheating on her, and she slaps him, and that all happens in one scene, like, and we never see that teacher ever again.
Nope.
And
never to be seen.
Never to be seen. No consequences of that, and he doesn't know why. Like, it's just like, okay, we're establishing he's a jerk. Great, he's a jerk, but he's not actually done anything to hurt anyone, aside from the fact that, from his perspective, Joy was trying to blackmail him, and he decided, I'm not going to entertain that, so I'm not going to write you a recommendation letter. And now it's like, now that he has reacted this way, the screenplay is trying to then justify further grievances against him by inventing new problems, which should have been seeded in the first act. Like, we should have seen him when he's, like, gathering around with the kids and stuff, and maybe he sees the teacher that he's sleeping with, and he gives her, like, a subtle wink or a nudge or something that shows that there's chemistry there, or something's going on that might be considered a little unethical with the hierarchy of the school system. Could have done that. Didn't do that. Could have been a thing where if, like, two kids fell down and he quickly helped pick up the white kid first and not the black kid, maybe you could like just give us something to show that this guy, maybe even if the school likes him, that they like him, that their love of him blinds them from being able to see that he's not really a good guy. But they don't. But the writer doesn't do that. So now I'm having a hard time believing that this is an authentic type of story. I mean, I know it's fiction, but you're not selling the world to me in which I can actually get lost into it. You're doing things that contradict your setups to the point where I'm constantly pulled out of the story and be like, okay, this doesn't make sense. You have a principal, everybody likes him.
You've not even got to the best bit yet. You've not even got to the best
immediate
bit
response to an all-star student who happens to be black asking for a letter of recommendation to the Haynes Scholarship is, yes, I'm going to do that by the end of this week. Happy to. You go, girl. I've got your back. You're a great student, etc. All right, cool. Even if that's all a lie, you've got to give us some more stuff to give us some breadcrumbs to let us know that is a lie. Don't do this about face with, she finds blackface. She goes to confront him about it. He's embarrassed. He apologizes. She leaves. She finds out from another student that he's been suggested to go for this same scholarship. She goes back to the principal to challenge him on that, which, who is she to do that? Catches him shredding that paper. And when she objects, he says, well, I'm not going to give you that letter now anyway. And
because she's blackmailing him.
And so we as an audience are supposed to be like, well, wait, she's in the right in this situation here? She's the one who dug up a past mistake from another character is supposed to be in the right. And then in order for the script to justify that she is in the right, they now have to make the principal someone who does blackface all the time in private in his gated community with all the other people there up until recently. So now I'm like, I'm not believing this anymore.
And Bill was in there. That's why he was named.
Yep.
He was in the blackface pictures as well. And do you know what else? It's just, you're getting to that point, exactly. You're sitting, you're going, this is absolute nonsense, just nonsense. We're having to make it up ourselves, like in terms of filling in these gaps and different bits and bobs. But you've not even got to the best bit yet. The best bit is literally the end, and obviously we can't say too much about for obvious reasons. But when that came, I was just blown away.
Well, I mean, yeah, because the climax happens at prom,
Yeah,
and it's full of it just doesn't meet. It's not believable. It
absolute not.
I mean, there's one joke where the vice principal spikes the punch, and then he tries to keep all the kids away from it. And I'm like,
Oh,
I'm
there's
like,
like the
that's
stoner kid
yeah,
kind of
like the stoner
thing.
kid and stuff. And I'm like, that's okay. I see the joke, but it doesn't land because the joke is when you spike the punches to get the kids drunk so that they embarrass themselves, but you spike the punch so that the faculty can get drunk, but none of the faculty, none of the chaperones are drinking. So
And nowhere
where's
does
the
it
joke?
state anywhere there's any other faculty. It just
No,
states there's him
it's just
and
him.
principal. It's like so he's spiking drinks for basically for underagers, and you're like, oh dear God! And you just like I know you've watched American Pie and thought that was hilarious. That was hilarious in 2000, not 2024. Do you know what I mean? If that happened nowadays, kids would probably be sent home, and that person would be probably arrested. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Then it was kind of laugh, jokey kind of thing. And I told you about obviously Scotland. We don't get proms like in America or like Canada per se. You get like a final year dance.
Yeah, we get like
My fourth,
formals or something of that nature.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So on our ones, we go. My one was my fourth year, and I went, got drunk, and went home. That was it, and danced to a few girls and went home. That's all we did. You know, there wasn't like this big massive thing. And obviously, we're Americanized now in terms of that. I understand exactly what it is. I'm just trying to find the guy's name, who it was, and he was like, "Don't you drink that punch?" And the guy's
Uh,
just looking at him.
yeah, it was
Um,
well, Mr. Jeffries is the guy who says it, but I can't remember
yeah,
who the kid is. Because
that's what
he
I'm trying to
doesn't
think. The
have any
kid.
lines, I don't think.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's like,
yeah,
but he does that as a speech when he's about to announce who's the homecoming king and queen, and then that's where, I mean, that's kind of the climax at this point, is the fact that
yeah.
again, what ends up happening is Joy tries to blackmail the principal again at prom.
Honestly, gets
And
better.
it's like, okay, this is not looking good for our hero here. And all I'm thinking
Yeah,
of is, as I said before, well, Rain is the one doing all the work and getting all the research and is confirmed through off screen that there is embezzlement. And, without revealing all the other details, she gets back on the paper. So Rain gets what she wants. And I'm like, well, Rain should be the main character here. Because she's the one that
Mhm.
actually went through an arc. Even though she didn't really learn anything, she had a goal. She had something she wanted. She did things to get what she wanted.
Mhm.
And it kind of worked. So you could actually do a character arc where maybe Rain has to learn that if she's going to be a journalist, she can't just be a gossip journalist. She actually has to get evidence to prove her case so that she can be considered an actual journalist, and that's what got her back on the paper. So that's your story arc where she learns I can't just make stuff up, I have to seek out the truth. Boom, there's your story arc. You can frame it in this type of situation here. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And it's like, okay, yearbook journalist student thrown on the yearbook as a punishment, decides to investigate the principal, discovers a horrible truth, reveals it to the world, gets back on the school paper, and justice is served to the principal. No, that's not this story. This story is about a Mary Sue character named Joy, who everybody likes, who the universe kind of alters around her preconceived notions of people,
Yes.
and then allows her to save the day and get what she wants in the end, even though she doesn't actually have enough agency on her own. Aside from her only agency is blackmail. And the only
Yeah.
reason she does the blackmail is because other people have investigated and found the blackmail for her to use.
And that's the nonsense. That's just the ludicrousness of it. So they started off with a social issue, blackface, right? They started off with it, right?
Yeah.
And everybody when someone said to me when I actually started reading it, I had to go Google what it was because it's not a term that we use in the UK that I'm aware of that I've heard kind of in my
Mm-hmm.
normal day-to-day life. And then the first picture that came up was Robert Downey Jr. I was like, oh, Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
I get it now. I understand, right? And that whole bit about that. There's your opening about blackface. That's how you talk about it. Do you know what I mean? Wasn't used. Nothing. Just thrown against the wall. And then halfway through, no, even maybe just a wee bit over halfway. It's just discarded, gone, never been spoken about again. Same with that one of the points we will come back to if we get a chance, obviously, in terms of we don't want to spoil anything for anyone. But and then you look at the embezzlement and you go, right, so where did this come from? This is your point. This is the point, and this is where the wee girl who's the investigative journalist. That's her. She should be, instead of going and breaking into somebody's house and breaking into their gated community, she should be doing that and going away, and that's where she should come back to you and say, "Listen, I know you're a bit pissed off about this blackface, pal, but
the real
look at
crime
this."
is he's stealing money,
Yeah,
and I found evidence that doesn't involve me committing
there you go.
crimes to find, to prove it.
It's
It's like
like,
I mean, again, if this was story was Rain's, and it was basically she's breaking into houses, and then she doesn't find what she wants, and then she's learning from like another journalist. It's like, well, even if you were to steal evidence, that wouldn't be admissible because you got it under ill-gotten gains. So
yeah,
you have to find something that works to it. And if you can't find it at the person's home, find it through ways that you can actually do. And there's so many
yeah.
ways. Well, number one, the principal's got a very expensive car. How much is that?
Yes,
How much is that to maintain and insure over the course of a year? He lives in a gated community. What's the average rent cost of maintenance and maintenance fees and living in that? And what do the retail think for the homes? But let's see the trust fund. What do the public records say about how much he got and what does he do? Are there tax returns that are publicly made available that he has or something of that nature? And you just do the
yeah,
math
absolutely,
and you figure out, oh,
absolutely.
wait, I'm finding the same evidence that the accountant that told the principal one day.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, she's running out of money. Well, how is he able to maintain this lavish lifestyle? We don't know. Oh, wait, there's that student that won that scholarship last year and he's working at a fast food or he's on the street or something. What happened to him? He had a free ticket going all the way to finish school.
Yep.
You talk to him.
Yep.
Oh, this money
Yep.
ran out. Well, if the money ran out in that thing and that scholarship, and the principal wrote a letter that got him that scholarship, maybe the principal is connected to the scholarship. Let's go find out. Yep, he's on the board of the scholarship committee. So where's all the money? And then you just let it all unravel
That's it.
naturally.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm saying
absolutely.
and this is the structural stuff. So this writer who has a way with words, knows how to do
Yes.
dialogue, has all these other seeds for better stories in this script, and picked the one that was more geared towards a fad of sorts. I'd argue.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right, and that's the problem is it is in its very basic thing. There is a very good script in here somewhere. Now we could sit for probably more hours than we've got and discuss it with the chat with everyone else, and we could come up with something brilliant. And then we just phone Netflix and say, just give us a check, just give me the money, right, and we'll fix it. But the problem is because it's so scatterbrained, it's so different points, different places, different things. You find yourself hard to. Because I had to go back and reread it because I thought that where's blackface? Where's that? That was the main point of this.
Yeah.
She was raging because he was racist, but then in no way a point. Oh yeah, right, okay, he done it in 2016 as part of a gated community. Wow, what do you think's going to happen? You know, these people have swingers parties. These people are a bit nuts. Do you know what I mean? That's obviously something that they partake in and they enjoy. He's now banging the mayor's wife. That was kind of not alluded to, dropped for a wee while and then re-brought back up at a later point. It's like there's no natural flow to it. And like you just did there, you took the point, got the main character who we both think is the main character, and went, that's your story. This other, Ray Palpatine, Mary Sue woman, she can just be brilliant at everything. On you go crack on head, you can get your scholarship and go invent, I don't know, the wheel again. But the point is that there's your redemption arc, there's your arc for everything, and that's showing him to be evil, but just genuinely evil, like you just want to punch him in the face, evil.
Yeah.
And because he's stealing from minorities, he's stealing from people that don't have.
He's stealing
his
from
own
the
lavish lifestyle.
underprivileged, and he's robbing their futures, which
Yeah.
is terrible. That's a great motivator for us to hate him, but that wasn't hit properly. And one of the things when it comes to a main character deals with technically three obstacles. The first obstacle is the world that they're entering in. The second one is obviously the antagonist. And then the third one is whatever their personal flaw is, whether it's self-doubt, whether it's arrogance, whether it's greed or lust or whatever it is. That's their internal flaw that hampers them from achieving their goal, in addition to the fact that they're in a strange new world that this adventure has taken them to, and that they're going against an antagonist that has their own goals. And in this script, the only one of those three things is used, and that is the principal as the antagonist. There's no other challenges for her. So, like, she doesn't have a flaw. I mean, unless the fact that she's an inactive character, and like that's already hurting your screenplay in general, because your main character should be the most active. They should be the one trying to achieve something. And she's only achieving something as a byproduct of other characters trying to achieve their own thing. And that doesn't really work its way out. And it really spends too much time trying to make the villain, the principal, a bad guy without actually giving us some really good, juicy stuff to make them a bad guy. Like, being the other man in a marriage doesn't really make that guy a bad guy.
No.
Because it makes the woman in this case a bad guy.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Being a jerk, and dressing up in bad costumes for Halloween as a sophomore in high school makes you foolish, makes you a jerk, but it doesn't necessarily make you a bad guy worthy of a villain. So when Cat finally introduces the idea of the bad guy, it's like page 80 in a 100-page pen-page script. It's come so late to the point where it's like, you're trying to get me to hate this guy for just being a jerk. And the other part too is you're not giving us any stakes. Like, I want to know, if Joy doesn't get this scholarship, what would her future look like? Is she going to have to be stuck being a waitress like her mother, and also single with 3 kids? Give us that fear in her. But Joy doesn't have that fear. She doesn't know. She doesn't care. She doesn't establish it. And as a result, we can't empathize with that because we don't understand how important this is to her. And if we don't understand how important that is to her, we don't relate to her. And you want to relate to someone like Joy. And then I will say this: there is, like, her best friend's a lesbian, but even then, it's actually treated rather neutrally. Like, it's not a huge point over hitting the hammer over the head that she's gay or anything of that nature. It's just a normal relationship.
I thought it was done tastefully.
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah. Like, no one would bat an eye at this.
No.
Even with some parts where Drea gets upset, she's crying, the best friend and the girlfriend have a little rock paper scissors things, like, well, you go console her. Well, you're the best friend. Yeah, but you're the girlfriend. And then they're like, well, neither of them want to do it. And I'm like, that's kind of funny. That's very relatable situation when you're dealing with that dynamic. And it's played well. I'm like, well, this is okay. And if you're going to do a story about these 3 and just their day-to-day coming-of-age high school stuff, there's plenty of fun work here. But I think I think the writer is punching above their weight class in regards to this type of story, where it's a high school story, it's about their future, but she's glossed over the importance of what that future means, and she's wedged in an authoritative figure using a racial veneer to basically convey that they're bad, and then trickle out bad things, most of which are just really non-damaging, non-harmful, just obnoxious stuff. And then the one harmful thing you have, you don't give us any time to really see how bad it is, the repercussions that it causes, and how the principal benefits. Like, that's the other part too. We never understand how the principal benefits from this, because we're never shown that he needs the money. So he's just embezzling to be an embezzler? Like, that's not how embezzlement works.
No, it does not. So no, and that's the point. And there's one point I put in the private chat for you, but I don't think we'll have time. I don't think you want to cover anyway. But there's one point when you go and read the scripts of any Patreon or anyone that does get these scripts, go and read the last part, and just think that this is a fully grown ass man and a 17-year-old girl, and you just read it with that knowledge and go, right, this is clearly just written as a Mary Sue type person. She can do no wrong. She is the second coming. That type of thing. And I don't find, like, when before we came on, there's nothing. Like, there's nothing on the other side of the coin. Like you said, what's going to happen if she doesn't get the scholarship? What will she have to do? Well, she won't go to college anyway because she can't afford it. So she'll need to go different routes. And then, the whole point of this is because he said he wasn't giving her a letter, now he's not there. And somebody else pops up and says, oh, by the way, I'll give you a better thing. And here's the thing. Okay, so we get told what the thing is. But what if I just wasted 110 of my pages of my life? Like, you know what I mean? This is just thrown in here at the end as like a kind of a feel-good factor. Everybody works out. But we always knew it was going to work out for Joy. We always knew it was going to work out for them because that's the narrative. That's what you've been spinning for the very beginning. Telling me this principal's a bad guy because blackface, right? Okay, fine, I get it, right? We'll beat that to death, you and I talking about it. But then the really, really evil thing is goes over like what, 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages maybe?
Doesn't
And
even.
then
It's really, we get
gone.
like a quarter of a page on one page, and then a little bit more detail of it a couple pages later for another quarter page, and then we get
Yeah.
one page at the end. And
So
well, it also kind of sets up to what you wanted to talk about, which is the fight. I
that's
mean, without do the best you can without spoilers, of course, but gloss
aye.
over some of the stuff so that our
Yeah.
listening audience can understand how silly
All,
this
all,
is.
all I'm going to say, right, is there's a part in this that you really have to just take your brain out, put it on the side table, and just read it or watch it, right? Because there is absolutely no way on this earth that a 17-year-old high school girl is going to take down a 40-year-old man. And let's be honest, it's never stated or implied, but the man clearly looks after himself, so he's going to be, a buff man. He's not going to be overweight or,
Well,
that kind of thing. It's
he was able
always stated.
he was able to pick up the 40-year-old wife that he was sleeping with and carry her up the stairs without much of an issue. Other than he
The
made the one
family.
joke like,
Yeah.
"Did you gain a couple of pounds since last time?" It's like, okay, he's still able to
Yeah.
do it, but he's making a very lewd joke. I
And
mean, it's not like the principal is Danny DeVito, a
no,
short
exactly.
guy
Exactly.
who,
I mean,
someone with weight, with height and reach could do some damage against if they so chose. It's clearly supposed to be an imposing figure, handsome. I think the screenplay mentions like George Clooney as a model.
yeah, it does. Yeah.
So
I'm
continue,
looking at that and
please.
I'm going, there's absolutely no way on this earth that that's happening. There's no reason for it to be in there, right? It's there for a reason because Joy's Ray Palpatine this popped up and she had to go and save the day from something that really was something of her doing. She practically created this monster by not going through the appropriate channels and taking it to different places. So I mean, don't get me wrong. See again, I don't want to say too much because of spoilers, and I really do trust people read this, right? But you look at it and you go, that doesn't need to be there. Like this whole bit doesn't need to be there. They don't need to do this. They don't have to have this, this Rami or this sort of type of thing, because at no point in this, apart from Gerald being a bit, on the kind of nasty side, how he's conversating and stuff like that, it's never alluded to. It's not even alluded to she could throw a punch, and yet here we are. You know what I mean? She's doing what, and I'm not saying this punch is thrown, but this is never alluded to. It's never brought into. Like I could see the point if this embezzlement thing was brought up and she cracked it with the others and like a wee kind of Goonies type thing, and they cracked it all, and he was a bit, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to throw you off a building, and that kind of thing. You could see that, right? But in no way, all he says is, I'm going to stop you, I'm going to make sure you don't have anything. That's just words, that's nothing, right? And when I read it, I literally had to reread it again because I was like, there's no way anybody could suspend that much belief. I get it, she might have been, see if you said to me she's a 26-year-old UFC fighter, aye, no problem, but she's taking him out to dinner and a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But see when she's a 17-year-old high school girl, you're like, not even a cheerleader, no, it doesn't, nowhere does it state she does any sports or anything such as that. I'm like, I cannot suspend that much belief. I'm sorry, I couldn't. And that's what we were talking about earlier on. That's what I was just like, this is absolute nonsense, man. Like, honestly, nonsense.
It is, and it's unfortunate because like the log line, as silly as it was, it did bring in some inspiration to me where I'm thinking, okay, this is like the movie Election with Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon. And the conflict behind that is Matthew Broderick is a teacher and Reese is a student, and Reese is a very driven, ambitious student who's kind of a know-it-all, and she's so committed to getting her way that she's lacking humility. And Matthew Broderick decides in order to make her a better person, he's going to create a situation that will humble her. And so he works the way to do that, and it ends up being self-destructive to him because she is basically like an unstoppable force. And that is where the comedy comes from, is like these two are now at odds of each other because he feels that if she's not humbled, she could do harm to a lot of people that need opportunities. So like she just sucks up all the opportunity around her to do it, and Matthew's like, well, that's not good. There's these other students that are trying, they're working really hard, they're actually growing and doing well, and I'm going to be a good teacher and facilitate that. But every time I'm trying to get the other kids to learn, she's the one raising her hands, answering the right questions so that those kids don't have to think. And so, and he's like, that's
Yeah.
not good dynamic for his classroom. And he comes at it from a very authentic place. But then we slowly find out he's kind of a jerk. He's fantasizing about his best friend's wife. He's actually willing to like cheat and manipulate things so that so that Reese's character doesn't get the outcome that she's worked hard for and earned. And I'm like, I'm really hoping that might be the inspiration for this, but it's not. It's the exact inversion. It's basically the teacher's just doing his own thing, and the girl Joy is doing thinks that everything's all good. She finds a horrible secret about the guy, and it starts this entire controversy. And in a normal comedy, that should lead to the destruction of Joy and the humility of her to realize that she shouldn't be trying to exploit or cancel other people based on a past grievance that is no longer a habit of the character. But instead, it's like, nope, the preconceived notion is also going to be the exact result, and we are going to take it all the way to fruition. There's no redemption. There's no misunderstanding. It's a very black and white issue, and this is how justice prevails. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a very poor story.
That's it. Ultimately, that's at the end of the day. And then obviously the complete ending of it, I'm not going to. I'll kind of try and dust over as much as I can. And the complete ending, and it's just that one thing that I said to you infuriated me was, what was the word they used again? Some things change, but they also stay the same, or wording like that.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And I'm like, that is such a lazy way of finishing something. Like, tell us what happens. Tell me, the person who's sat here for, and read this, wasted some of my time reading this.
Well, I mean, it's a learning experience, which is the fact that this is not what you do when you're trying to craft a story where you're putting two people at odds with each other. You don't invent more bad things for the antagonist to justify the bad actions of your hero. Like, and that's basically the lesson you take away from this is that the hero is not doing anything good.
No.
Even though the story is telling us, oh, she's in the right, you still have to have them behave in the right. And that's not what Joy really does. She's kind of dragged around by other characters who have their own agendas. And oddly enough, Rain's agenda is just to get the story. She actually doesn't care what the truth is in that sense. She's not willing to lie or do anything like that. She's like, we're just going to find evidence and report it. That's it.
Yep.
Like, that's pretty objective. That's not bad. If it points to this one direction, it's great. At no point does she find any counter evidence that says, well, maybe he's actually not a bad guy. And so we don't get that scene where maybe the principal's not a bad guy and Rain says, well, we have to know that he's a bad guy, so we're just going to keep digging until we find it. Like that, you don't get that scene. It's basically like, nope, no. Every action they do leads into that, yes, he is a bad guy. And it's all glossed over. It's
but
again, it's a learning experience. It's like if you're wondering if you're wondering if a screenplay that you've written and your main character is maybe too perfect, use this script as a palate cleanser to figure out if you can recognize anything in Joy that you have maybe done with your main character, and if that's the case, just go and rewrite your main character so that they don't do the things that are similar to what Joy did.
That's it. And I absolutely, man. I mean, I don't think there's very much else we can really say in terms of what it was. I like my first read through is the first time I've read a script really, and I quite enjoyed it because it's the written word. And then my second read, and obviously my big read today, I was just like, I've got 4 pages worth of notes, just on things that annoyed me, and just on things that I looked at and I'm going, why am I having to put this story together? Like, I'm not getting paid to finish your story. Give me a finished story and I will read it, or give me a finished TV show and I'll read it. And that's, I think, the problem there is, like you alluded to, you said it's maybe been added, maybe been done over a period of time, maybe over a year or so, and the narrative's changed, and you can see that narrative changing. So if you look at it that way, embezzlement 2022, what was a big topic in 2022? I wonder, that kind of thing. You can see that's been tacked on. The blackface thing, right? Okay, that's right. We've beat that to death. You and I talked about that, right? So I just think that Adega in the chat, he hit the nail on the head when I was talking about the fight. He went, author fantasy.
Definitely.
So she obviously wanted to have a fight scene somewhere. It's like, no, have the fight scene between somebody else and somebody else, not this 17-year-old girl. She's like, you know, I get, obviously read the script, you'll read it yourself, and then you'll hopefully agree with me. But I think it's quite, if it was to be made, if it was to be a thing, it would need to be a dark comedy. It would need to be like, I don't even think you could. I don't think even you could fix this. I honestly don't. So
No, because I'd essentially be rewriting the story through the perspective of
yeah,
Rain, and that'd make it a
yeah,
completely different story. I mean, like there's this one scene that we skipped over because it could have been a good way to facilitate why the principal was embezzling, and that is when the cheerleaders start a fundraiser for his cancer treatment.
that's right. Yeah,
And
that's right.
it's only one scene, but it raises a bunch of questions like, well, why are the cheerleaders doing a fundraiser when the whole world knows that he's, you know, a trust fund kid and he's got lots of money? And that could be your end. Be like, well, maybe, you know, the cheerleaders among a bunch of gossipers, maybe the person who is coaching the cheerleader squad is the teacher that's sleeping with the principal, and she knows something too, and she let it slip. There's your chain of custody with regards to information that gets to Rain to say, oh, if he's doesn't have as much money as he says, and he's giving us this cancer thing, is the cancer lie not just a cover to distract from the blackface stuff, but is it also a way for him to get additional money that he's not getting from the embezzlement and from his principal job? There's something to explore. Like, now he's a guy that's exploiting cancer. All of these things could be really, really fun, inventive ways in order to make, because again, you have to make your bad guy bad. Not bad for just being bad, but bad with motivations that they themselves benefit from. So many people conflate that with the sympathetic hero. It's like, no, we just need to know why they're doing it. We don't have to like it. We can empathize with it, but we're not empathizing with their actions. We're empathizing with the inciting incident that led them to these actions. So for instance, you know, guy gets mugged, and then he decides, I'm going to kill the mugger. And then after he kills the mugger, he's like, I'm going to kill all these other muggers. And he starts killing people that aren't muggers. And now you're like, well, now you're a villain. And now he's stealing from those people he's killed. Now he's become the mugger. And you're like, I could empathize with his inciting incident, but now he's gone over the edge. Now he's bad. Now someone has to come in and stop him. But I understand where he started, and we see where he lost control. And that loss of control is what makes us no longer empathize with him, and now we like to hate him. And now we want to see him like face justice. But we don't get any of that thought from this story, even though the setting is ripe for that. I mean, if you say the premise is high school principals embezzling from a scholarship fund to offset their debts at the expense of underprivileged kids, I'm there. And it takes only one kid to actually call it out, investigate it, and expose it. And now they're fighting each other, battle of wits to try and, not have this result occur. And I'm thinking of this on the spot right now, so I apologize for my poor articulation, but this is just the type of way you work it out. It's like this. What we could speculate here is that the writer wanted to tell a story where a very privileged white man finally faced justice, but she doesn't know anything about the subject that she was writing about to make us believe that this guy committed enough of a heinous act that he deserves the justice with which he is going to face. And because of that, it doesn't ring true. It doesn't feel like a story we can get behind, even though I can totally get behind that premise. You give me that premise and you stay true to that premise, I am there.
Yep.
But
absolutely.
She threw in a bunch of red herrings, the blackface, the sleeping with someone else's wife, the hiding behind a fake cancer diagnosis.
I mean,
okay,
even
all
that
these
itself,
things just make him a jerk. They don't make him evil.
Even that in itself. So the cancer thing came in to obviously get him off of being, apparently a racist, and you're like, that was just disappeared as well.
Yeah,
never to be spoken about again. And you're like, but that's a main point he's using to protect himself, and yet it's just obviously no spoilers, but obviously there's things happen at the very end, and you're like, it's never ever brought up again. So these are, like you say, red herrings. These are all these things that you go, like, I don't even know what she was attempting to do. I honestly sit here and I'm like, no.
Yeah, I think she thought she was shining a light on a problem that might exist in her imagination somewhere, because this story reminds me. So one of my best friends, whom I've known for, oh God, 10 years now. He had a story that he's been working on where when he went to high school, one of the teachers there, a male teacher, was very flirtatious with all the female students, and the female students at that time reciprocated that flirtation because they're hormonal. He was cute, blah blah blah, all that type of stuff. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't right. I will say this. It was very wrong.
Correct.
And he tried to call it out. And when he did, he found out that there were powers that be greater than him that was able to silence it. And the thing that he found out as he was doing this is that some of the students, the girls that were engaging in this flirtation, their parents would find out. They would go to the school board. They would go to city council and stuff. And because that teacher's father was on city council, all those problems magically disappeared. So now you've got a conspiracy going on. It's really dark. And now he is of an age, and I don't think he has any kids. I mean, no, he doesn't have any kids. Like sometimes I keep forgetting sometimes because so many of my other friends do. He's the one that doesn't bring up kids. But I'm wondering, like, okay, well, I know that teacher's still there. Are these young girls who are now adults and who have kids, are their kids at this school now? And is that teacher doing the same thing? And if so, will they regard that attitude as the innocent flirtation that they thought it was when they were teenagers? Or would they be like, wait a minute, why is this guy who's now pushing 60 flirting with my teenage daughter, right? And you're wondering what that cycle is. I'm like, that's a great angle for a story to have, where you generally have someone that is enacting predatory behaviors on students, playing favoritism, and being shielded by people in government. And it's just to keep the status quo. Where that is where you draw that inspiration from for something like this. Like here, it would be great if you had not the mayor, but maybe other people in the school board protecting the principal, because they're in on the scheme as well. Maybe the entire scholarship, Haynes Scholarship, is a Ponzi scheme of sorts. It's used to get donations, and it doesn't actually go to the kids. Like, open it up, have some fun, make this guy really evil and bad. Like, the racism can just be your tip of the iceberg, and then just have it peppered throughout all the rest of the story of all these other things that he's doing. Like, because you want to make this bad guy bad, don't gloss over the stuff that really can get to people and get into their hopes and dreams and aspirations. Racist stuff is when it comes to anyone that's bad, racism is only just the surface of what the actual atrocities they're going to commit themselves afterwards.
Correct.
So, and you want to get to those things as quickly as possible, especially in a screenplay when you're limited to 2 hours. Just get in there, like get your hooks in there and be like, okay, so you find out he's racist. Then you realize, how racist is he? Well, he is so racist that this Haynes Foundation is actually a scam to solicit donations from all these wealthy people with the intentions of it going to minorities, and instead of giving it all to the minorities to have them go give opportunities for college and a future career, it's all going to the school board. And
absolutely,
it's all the scheme of this one principal, and everybody else is just falling in line for it. That it would be cool, but no, it's centralized to him, and maybe this other white guy that's on the council, who we never really see. We see him in one scene, and then that's it. And you're like,
Brett.
Yeah, Brett. Good for you, sir. You brought in a co-conspirator and you did nothing with it.
Somebody put in the chat there was quite funny. Shedowski, he's at the Kathleen Kennedy School of Fundraising. That's brilliant, that.
Maybe.
But, yeah, that's it, yeah. But I told you before we came on, my headcanon, and I've kind of alluded to that, is I started filling in the blanks myself. And see if I took the actual embezzlement and then just got rid of the blackface, there's just no point having it there, right? Because he's not racist. You can tell he's not racist. He's just an idiot, right? And he's not like an actual racist person. He's just an absolute idiot. So, see if you take the embezzlement. My headcanon was Anthony Starr of Homelander fame.
Right, yeah.
Because he's just fucking evil. Right. And he's good at being evil. And he's evil with a smile, and I'm like, I could see him in my version of which basically is the same as yours of this. I could see him being that. Joy, Joy could be anybody, in terms of that, right? But I had him because just the natural evilness, and that's the level of evil you want to be. You want this character to be hated. Like, you want to go boo if you see him on telly type thing. But there was nothing with that. It was just like, oh, by the way, even with him, there didn't seem like there was any kind of like problem. All right, okay, I fine, whatever. You know, oh, I've got cancer. Oh, by the way, that cancer's magical. He actually says in it, in the script, he goes, what was it he said? He went,
Oh yeah, who knows? It could vanish. I could beat it in the next
that's it.
couple of months or something,
That's
a
it.
couple of
That's
years
it.
or something. Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, my understanding is not very good. If I'm not a medical person by any shade of
Yeah.
the imagination, right? But I understand is if you have cancer and it went to your brain, you're not going to be on this earth for a very long period of time. Right? That's my understanding. It may be wrong.
Hmm.
Obviously, people can correct me if I'm wrong, right? But oh, by the way, it just may disappear. You're like, there's nothing. There's nothing. It's just like somebody's wrote words down and said, "There you go, have that," and hopefully somebody that will read it and go, "Oh yeah, let's just fix this and move this about and that kind of thing." It's like, no, just delete the whole lot and then just rewrite it from using the embezzlement, taking that as a point, using your other little mini points, like
Hmm.
he has to sleep with the mayor's wife to make sure that the mayor's like no, he's banging the mayor's wife because he's blackmailing the mayor to keep the mayor on side so that he doesn't get because the mayor finds out about it and the vice principal's the only one that because he came into the job later and all the teachers are running it. There you go, there's your story. There's your 90-minute of my film. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? And I just don't think that if they'd went that route, it would have been good. But listen, it's my first time reading a script. I
Mhm.
thought it was fun the first time, but the third time, I literally took my brain out and put it in the side and went, let's go.
Well, with
Damien
that,
Lewis, good shout as well. Read good. Damien
yeah.
Lewis is a good shout.
I mean, again, it's. I'll put it to you this way: it's really just story choices and following through on what the premise is that hurts the script the most because you grab any page of it and be like, yeah, that's a well written page. Okay, dialogue's okay. I understand the
Yeah.
character point of view.
Hmm.
Voices are distinct. Descriptions are good. Wonderful. But and again, you're going to find there's a lot of writers in Hollywood, especially of what from this script you could assume what the persuasion is of this writer. They're very much of a ideology that is not necessarily story first, and those people can actually write well. They are not incompetent when it comes to scripting a story. They're incompetent as it comes to the structure, what it means, character development, character motivation, proper conflict, fully exploring the flaws and the stakes of what is going on with these characters. That is what hurts it. And the thing is that you can if you can write well without those things, you can fool a lot of people. And that's how we get weird stories on film and television that we're like, well, what the heck is this? This doesn't make sense. Why is she a Mary Sue? Why is he default evil, or vice versa? Why is he a Gary Stu? Why is she default evil? All these things, nothing kind of fits a humanistic narrative. You know, the way that humans have told stories that have stood the test of time does not fall within these parameters here. Therefore, it's an inauthentic story, and I think that's the problem with this script. And
I think we've crashed.
yeah, no, you're not having crashed. You're still good. You're freezing a little bit, but you're okay. Maybe. Oh, hopefully not. I think it's just the camera stuff. Yeah, it's just the camera stuff. Because I can still see you moving and hear you.
Hello.
Can you hear me? No, you can't hear me. Because he's broadcasting. Oh, we've got our first on-air technical difficulty, folks. That's okay. Because he is. You haven't crashed. You are still broadcasting on my end. Let's see here.
Well, okay, yeah, I've got you there. Got you there.
Yeah. Okay,
That's
there
fine.
we go. He was just catching up. There we are.
Oh,
That's okay. No problem.
damn potato internet.
It's all right. Well, you know what? With that said, let's take that as a sign. With that said, Grums, would you rate this a pass or a green light?
If it's on less than a pass, I wouldn't green light it. I would take it straight back to the very basics and rework it using the embezzlement as the main key point and using different characters, moving characters about. Still have the Joy character, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but I would pass. I would pass on it.
Yeah, I would pass as well. Premise is okay, but it needs some more refinement.
Yeah.
I will say this: the writer has, again, the writer has talent, but I don't think her head's and her experience is in the right place for this type of story. I think she's punching above her weight class. I think if she really wanted to tell a story about an evil principal, doing something bad for their students, she could have gone a lot harder and a lot more direct and done something that really had a negative impact on the kids that would justify the actions of the protagonist. And instead, I think she came at it from a disingenuous angle in this particular script. So yeah, this is a pass for sure. I only recommend it to other writers as what not to do. You can learn a lot from what is done wrong in this. And you can also see how it got some things right when it came to characterization, voice distinction, and description of scenes. All of that stuff is perfectly fine. Like it fits a great model, but the way that it's strung together, the way that the stakes are avoided, and no consequences and soft antagonistic actions really does hurt this overall. So yeah, I'm sorry to Cat Wilkins out there. I hope your next script is much better than this. But congratulations on getting on the blacklist. You're very fortunate that at that time 25 producers thought this was an interesting film or an interesting script. I'm given the dynamic of what was going on in Hollywood at that point, I'm not surprised it got within the top 10 at number 5. But I don't see this being a movie that would sell well if produced as it is. So I would pass on it as well. So that's basically all I've got to say on this. Do you have any final thoughts, Gums, before we call it a night for you, sir?
Not much. Thanks very much for coming, everyone. It's been nice. It's been nice to talk to yourself about it. Where can I be found? Usually in your streams, Midnight Edge, the usual places, those kind of places. I'm back now. And fighting for marriage democracy. I like me some satire, so can usually be found fighting the bugs or the automatons somewhere. But absolutely been brilliant. Thank you very much for everyone's time. And wish you a very good evening. What have you got up to?
All right. Well, thank you again for joining me this evening, Gums. Thank you everyone out there for listening to us. Don't worry about the camera glitching. All the audio is being properly recorded here. We'll leave it all in for the show in the archives. But aside from that, I want to thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful night, and never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.